My big question was, how are we going to get these mules out of this log jam? Because it's Forest Service policy that you can't leave dead animals right on the trail. Good morning. I'm starting out today at Lower Marr Springs. And I don't really know too much about this area, but I'll show you around a little bit and I'll tell you what I do know. I don't know much about Mr. Marr's, but there's a pretty good chance if you're watching this, you've also watched Brett Vaughn with, I think his channel's Born 100 Years Too Late, and he's talked about Mr. Marr's. And so pretty much that's the only reason why I know about this place. And I kind of dug into it a little bit to see if I could find anything out about him. And there's really not a lot of information out there. We know that he was a saddle maker and he lived around Albuquerque, I think Bernalillo or something, Belen maybe, somewhere around Albuquerque. And he would come up here pretty much every summer and spend a month. And so this is Lower Marr Springs, and Upper Marr Spring was named after him. And I spent yesterday evening wandering around up there, and this is the only logical place for you to have a long-term camp. So I'm pretty sure this is it. I'm not 100% sure. So you have good water, and especially back in the day when he was in here, this was probably always flowing. It's pretty spotty right now, but there is water in the spring. You have this big flat. There has been a fire come through here, or probably multiple fires since last time Mr. Marr's was here. And this is pretty much it. The only real evidence of people from that era, so this would have been like 60s, 70s, probably 80s. Some old cot looking thing. It's been burned. But this has definitely been used recently. Where, you know, in the last few years, somebody cut all these limbs off to make like a camp area. This would definitely be a good place to just hang out if you didn't want to be around anybody, because this trail coming out, it's not real good. It's not really used. So, and everybody goes down Clear Creek and then they turn down the creek and then they climb out. So this would definitely be a good little hiding spot. But the real question is, how did he end up here? So the Marr's family, I think they came from Texas originally, then they lived in like Clayton, but for a while they lived in Reserve, which is pretty much the closest decent sized town from here. And the interesting thing is, so there's a guy, he was an outfitter, rancher type guy. He lived on Canyon Creek. His name was Quentin Hulse. And Quinton Spring, which is just right on the other side, like less than, I don't know, half a mile from Upper Marr Spring, that is named after him. And he was actually married for less than a year. So Quentin was married to Mildred, who was Mr. Marr's, Irvin Marr's. They were married for less than a year, and so it would make sense that they knew each other and they knew each other well, and so that's why they have springs named after each other, right by each other. So that's the only connection I can make between it. So Quentin, Mildred, they were married for like I said, it was less than a year. So there you go. I was just gonna go up Clear Creek and cut over the top there, but the trail wasn't bad, like terrible. You could make it, but it went through a burn scar and, you know, locusts and stuff like that. So I'm just headed back around. I'm gonna loop around Lilley Mountain the other way, kind of end up where I was. There's campsites all through here. Pretty popular spot. I'm up here on my evening walkabout, just checking things out. And I ended up over here on the trail. So I figured I'd just hit the trail and go back down. And this is the trail. I'm sitting on it. Doesn't look like it's been used in a long time. So, change of plans. I was just gonna come up here, cut over the top right here, and I could make it. What are you doing? But why? I have other places I could go instead of fighting this stuff, which would probably only be a mile and a half of fight, but it's not worth it. Not on this trip. This is Upper Marr Spring. Walking around over here, I haven't found any sign of any long-term camps. Doesn't even really look like a good short-term campsite. Don't pretend like you're a hound dog. But there's a little bit of water in it. Not much, it's dry. Dry. Trail's not terrible down here in the bottom. It's just where that fire was. Here's another one that the bushcrafties would have a heyday with. Just dig this thing out. But the question is, how do you get a spring named after you? Because I just claimed this one. I marked it. This is for now on Thai Spring right here. And by marking it, I wouldn't drink out of it for a little bit. And then Bo marked it after me. So, Thai Bo Spring. And I got a half of a participation trophy. There were some people camped down here at the spring below me, so I didn't really video much. I'm just going around Lilley Mountain. This is Lilley Park, named after Mr. Lilley and not Ben Lilley. Some people get that confused. This is the same one, same Lilley that's buried over there in Clear Creek. This is what happens when you miss the trail. Okay. Let's go back and find it. Yeah. There was a bear cub back there making a ruckus, and the sow was there, and I was paying attention to it. I was kind of trying to figure out what was going on. The dog didn't seem to care, even though it was making noise, but that mule sure did. So I was kind of paying attention to that, and I passed the trail, so it climbed out right there, and I kept going down the bottom. And instead of just going back, you know, half a mile or so back up the canyon, I decided to take a shortcut. That was pretty rough, but we all survived. Part of the deal, which the funny thing is, that was worse than where I was trying to avoid this morning. So I rode a bunch of miles around, ended up having to do it anyways. So yeah, it is what it is. At least I'm getting to check out this part of the country. I'm about to get wet, and we need it. We need every drop we can get. See what this sign says. Lilley Park, 3 miles. Marr Spring, 1.5 miles, I think. Turkey Feather Pass, 6.5 miles. Let's go. We're going this way. I learned something the other day. That whenever you're counting Mississippis for lightning, you're actually supposed to divide it by 5. So instead of, I always thought 1 Mississippi was 1 mile, but apparently not. And I just had a couple no Mississippis strike by here. So, you know, most of them, I'm surprised one hasn't hit while I'm recording. Most of them have been like 4 or 5 Mississippis, but a couple of them were no Mississippis. Right up here is Quinton Spring. So Quentin Hulse was the one that was married to Mildred, part of the Marr's group. It's always a good sign when you find a shovel. That means somebody was doing some work. I'm riding up the ridge, kind of the crest of the Jerkies. So Jerky Mountain, most people just call them the Jerkies. The way that they got their name was because the town of Mogollon, which is not that far over that way, they needed a lot of food. So this was the place where they would come and shoot deer and make jerky out. So it's fitting, I guess. After a while, they figured out that it was way easier just to raise beef, and so they didn't need the need for that much deer jerky. So the mountain kept its name. They stopped making jerky here. I have no idea why they picked this place. I don't know if it's because of the wind or if there's a bunch of deer here. Somehow it was a good place to make jerky though. I should mention that this was Quinton Holes' backyard pretty much. This is where he ran around. He's kind of well known in the area as a rancher, but more of like a guide and outfitter. He lived in Canyon Creek, which was just right back down there. And most people actually, honestly, they thought of him as like an alcoholic and a drunk. But there is a book written about him. But his girlfriend wrote it, and so there's some good stories in there, but it's kind of a love story, and she leaves out a lot of stuff about he's kind of hard to get along with. Nothing is not to say anything bad about him, but he definitely liked to pull the cork, that's for sure. He died in 2002 in reserve. He ended up selling this place and then ended up in reserve. And I think his girlfriend still lives there. So, yep, there's Quentin. Tough old bugger. I know that this little camera doesn't do much, but these views, hard to beat right here. Doesn't get too much better. You can see a long ways. I know that statistically getting struck by lightning is pretty low, but do they take into account guys riding a donkey up a ridge in a thunderstorm at the highest peak around? I don't think so. But until you've seen a tree explode by you, you haven't seen much. Pretty cool, pretty cool. This trail is actually in way better shape than I expected it to be. They're doing a good job. That's all I've been doing. Killing flies. You know when you go into a really big city and you see all the skyscrapers for the first time, and you're like, holy cow. And then about 2 minutes later, you're ready to leave because you can't handle it anymore. Well, this is one of those holy cow places, but you don't want to leave. This is a crazy fire in here. After about 5 miles of really good views, I'm about to descend again. Back into the, well, I'm headed to the pass over here. Kind of down lower. These are some big mountains. People don't and I know that the camera doesn't do it justice. It's a lot steeper and bigger than you think. This here is Turkey Feather Turkey Feather Pass. If you're a DIY elk hunter and you want to backpack in, 7 to 10 miles to get away from everyone, Turkey Feather Pass is the perfect place for you. Just looks like elk country, doesn't it? There you go. This trail down Turkey Feather has been bad for a long time, but there's no water up higher. That's about all we got. So I have to figure out how to get the horses down here. There's a couple really bad spots. It's just log after log, no real way around them for about, I don't know, 1,000 yards or so. And that was after I had to fight to get them as far as I did. This one right here is going to be probably the biggest challenge. You can see where the elk have been jumping it. But that's a little bit tall. It looks so it's waist high. It's a little bit too much. That's what I'm dealing with. We're making it. This one actually goes up. So you want to be a mule packer in the Gila. Made it to the puddle, hoping it fills back up overnight. I don't know about you, but I'm whooped. That's a pretty good. I went a lot further than I was planning on, but I made it. So I'm gonna call. This looks like a good place to camp, especially because there's actually water here. I'm gonna call it good. I actually put a tarp up because it started to sprinkle and then it stopped, of course. But this is the kind of stuff that blows my mind. There's a culvert. I'm in the middle of nowhere. And you could tell that this was an old road at one point, but really, a culvert? I can't even get a mule through here. It used to be a road. Stuff like this all over the Gila. If you think, well, we don't really need it as a wilderness area because it's so rugged, they can't make roads there anyways. There used to be roads all over. So it would be just like the national forest on the outskirts of the wilderness. There's roads all over them. This would be no different. If this wasn't wilderness, we'd have side-by-sides and four-wheelers driving up and down it all day. Maybe not all day, but you know what I mean. During elk season, you would. Right here is the reason why this trail is not maintained. Because the trail used to go right down the bottom of this, and it's pretty much impossible to do anything with it. This wall getting knocked down really bums me out. It was a CCC project. So if you don't know about those guys, it was in the 30s, and it was after the Great Depression or towards the end of it. They were trying to, nobody had work, so they would hire them, and there was man camps. There was one just down here on West Fork. And this was one of their projects. That was a lot of work. And I had heard that it was still up, but it might just be kind of recent that it finally fell. But it's a pretty big bummer. For a couple summers, I worked for the Forest Service on a trail crew, which is pretty much just straight manual labor. But it was quite the experience. The way it'd work, we'd work 8 days on and 6 days off. We'd call them hitches. And it was like your typical blue collar work where you ended somewhere and then the next hitch, you just picked up right where you left off and you kept going. But my boss, he called everybody on our days off and said, hey, we're going to Turkey Feather. We have some livestock to remove from the trail. I thought that was kind of strange. So I guess he was just giving us a heads up to pack accordingly. We knew it was going to be mostly horseback instead of walking. And I didn't really know any details until I got here. What we were told was there was an outfitter who had taken a summer trip and they were down here at the West Fork Corrals. And they were coming up and the trail used to be right here. And then it would kind of go down there and it would cross and it would go up. And when they were crossing right here, a flash flood came and it hit them. Pretty much all of them. Which is a bad enough deal. But what had happened was a guy was leading 2 mules, I think 2, and one of them started to panic and it started to paw at an older gentleman that was there. And I don't know if he was the one leading. I don't know any details. All I know is that one mule just about killed an older gentleman. So another guy in the party pulled out a gun to save the old man and shot the mule. So the mule went down and then he had that other mule was tied onto the back of him. And the flash flood washed both of them away. So one of them was shot, one of them drowned. And they washed down here. You could see where the trail was. It's really slick. They washed down here and they ended up in a log jam right in front of this wall. After the mules washed down, everybody went out on this little bench right there and they actually spent the night. So whenever we got here, you could see where they had a campfire and it did not look comfortable. They just left the animals saddled in the trail. They were stuck. They couldn't go up or down. And that was all they could do. Just in a rainstorm. I guess that this thing was flooded like almost to where they were camped. So it was a pretty bad deal. The trail used to come right here and it went right under this wall. So those mules were, it looks nothing like it did. The mules were in a log jam right there. But the trail was still intact up here. My big question was, how are we going to get these mules out of this log jam? Because it's Forest Service policy that you can't leave dead animals right on the trail, which this is right on the trail and in the water, so it's kind of like a double negative. So our options were we could quarter them and pack them out, or just pack them off the trail. But this was in a spot that was pretty bad and we couldn't even get to the mules. Whenever I got here, you could still, one was on top of the other and you could barely see the one on the bottom, but they still had pack saddles on and everything. But this was about 5 days later. And so it was getting pretty rank at that point. So option 2 is to blow them up. I'm not joking. Like explosives, kaboom. And I was all in. Like, yeah, I felt bad for the horse or the mules, but they're already dead. So I thought it was a great option. And it was very rare that we could deal with explosives because of all the permitting and so our main boss, actually he was second in charge. He was the only one that was certified to use explosives. So he actually came up. It's actually the only time I ever saw him in the field. So he rode up from the ranger station, or the cliff dwellings, where the ranger station was, and he brought in a bunch of explosives, which, yeah, as a young guy, I was all for. The next question was, how much do we use? So obviously most of us on the crew, we didn't have a lot of experience. Some of the people that had been there for a few years, like they had a few occasions when they used it. And they have all these formulas. They actually have formulas for how much explosive to use for a horse. But then we're like, well, what about all the logs on top of them? And what about, there's 2 of them? And so we did what anybody would do and just kind of put a little extra from the Forest Service formula. And we were really worried about destroying this wall. Like I said, it was right here right here. So we did all the safety protocol. We had people up high. I ended up down low, and you'd have to yell so many times. And we'd wear, I think we even had hard hats. That might be the only time I wore a hard hat in the Forest Service. And it blew up. I wish I would have had a camera or something. I didn't even think about that at the time. When we came back up here, it looked pretty much like that, kind of. Like I said, everything's a little bit different. But it cleared everything out. This wall had like this goo on it. It was just like blood, and it didn't smell or anything. And you could hear rocks falling and from way down the canyon. And so that kind of took care of the mule problem here. And it didn't destroy this wall. This was intact. That was kind of a huge priority that we had. When we got back and we realized that it had done its job, the only thing we could find was 1 jawbone and 1 hoof. So that was pretty good for 2 mules. So we had to destroy those as well, of course. And we decided that where the mule originally slipped off, it needed to be fixed, and we had a bunch of explosives, so we blew some of this rock out, kind of where that log's laying. And if I can't remember, we might have done it twice. But I remember we had a box full of this explosive that needed to be used. It's kind of like having firecrackers. You got to use it, right? And then I want to say there was a tree that we blew up. I don't know. There's a bunch of extras and leftovers. But that was by far the weirdest thing that happened to me while I was working for the Forest Service. Really bummed that this wall's knocked out, because that was so much work for those guys. I decided to just keep walking since I was already headed this way, and I made it to the West Fork. So this is the West Fork corral right here. That way, if something happens to me, even if they find my horses, they're still gonna have to look hard to find me. Makes sense. Because, yeah, Bo, you're gonna have to run for help if something happens. I don't think he's smart enough to do anything. There's your view of the West Fork. I climbed all the way up here so you could see it. You're welcome. Because I had to hike this thing. And it was, it's pretty steep. But that's it. It's pretty rough country. Bo doesn't know why we hiked up here. It's a pretty good view though. I went on my evening walkabout as usual, and I kind of got a little carried away this time. And carried away, I mean a little bit further away from the horses than I would like in this situation. you know, you're like, just one more hill. I'm just gonna go over the hill, Well, I have about an hour of daylight left, maybe. And I'm about 4 or 5 miles away, walking through this kind of stuff. So we'll see if I make it back before dark. This might turn into one of them survival situations. Should have brought some food. The truth is, I'm looking for an airplane. And I'm going off of really vague memories of rumors. So I vaguely remember probably 15 years ago, I'm getting old. Somebody told me about an airplane that was up here. And they said you could see it from the trail. So I'm back to where the trail goes up into the Jerky Mountains to loop around. And I'm on the West Fork Trail. And I've pretty much made the whole loop and can't find it. So I've looked on Google Earth. I've tried Googling it and stuff, you know, for the last 10 years. I guess I haven't looked that hard, but I'm definitely curious. There's not a lot of information, so is there really a plane? I have no idea. But if you want me to come find one, let me know if you figure out where it's at or if you've seen it or heard of it. I know that there are some over on Baldy, so maybe one of these days I'll make an effort to go try to find those ones. And, you know, it's kind of like the Airplane Mesa one. I've heard rumors of one. I've never seen it, but if somebody can tell me exactly where one is, I'll definitely go find it. This is fun, right? Hiking up these mountains after riding a horse all day. Keep joking with my wife saying I'm going to sell the horses and buy a PlayStation. Or maybe I can take up golfing. Golfing seems fun. And way less work. It's getting dark in a hurry. Not even halfway back yet. More uphills. Well, it's way after dark and I'm exhausted, but I'm back at camp. I made it. Here's your little camping hack. When you're trying to figure out where to lay your tarp down to sleep, if you find a bear trail just like this one that's pretty well used, all the way, and it keeps going all the way up around the corner there, you want to lay right next to it. So that way, it doesn't step on you, it just gets really close.